This is my boomstick. Well, not yet.
All right, you primitive screwheads, listen up.
One of the absolute big pieces of the Ash Williams costume is the boomstick. I ended up using this right here as the base, which I am going to customize for the costume. Now, this is the Rick's Shotgun edition from the TV show The Walking Dead. It's made by a company called Air Warriors. It's got a storage compartment in the back for the rounds, as well as it has an ejecting shell cartridge feature when you open this chamber up. But the shape absolutely looks really similar to the boomstick. Alright guys, now the first thing that you want to do is start breaking down the box and removing all the fun little plastic bits that come along with buying a toy of this kind. Really nothing much to it. I just wanted to make sure I get all the bits off and get all the little shell rounds and whatnot apart and put aside. So this right here on the back just explains the whole ejection process for opening the gun. The rounds come in with the shell casing, and then that's how they separate. Now, I did need to get the measurements for the gun, and this was part of the reason why I made the sheath after the fact of making the harness. This is the fabric that I bought to make the actual sheath out of. It's like a synthetic leatherette sort of material. I always believe before you start any sort of build process, just to avoid headaches, have a plan, have a bit of an idea about what you're going to be building. I basically created, like, imagine an isosceles triangle with the top cut off and made it flat. I'm not sure what shape that is, but that's basically what I went with. Another little tip is whenever you're using fabrics, use chalk. Chalk is amazing in being able to just mark off the areas, and then you can cut and prep out exactly like what I'm doing right here. Cut the shape out that you want with having some guidelines, and you're not having to commit with marker or pen or something like that. That can be a bit of a headache in getting off. I did use pen here because I'm going to be cutting this area out. So once I cut the shape, I knew that I needed to make some sort of holes. There's a tool that I'm going to be using. I don't know the name of the tool, but it basically punches holes and puts like a metal ringlet around the space. I wanted to have a bit more of a uniform approach because I wanted to sandwich the material across and basically guide it. And the way that I did it is I used my Fisker tool. You would have heard me talk about that in my last video. But basically I stabbed through to create an opening in the fabric. And then I was able to get the little metal pieces that come along with this tool. I'll put the name of the tool in the video. But you basically press the metal part down, you clamp on it, and then it provides like a metal ringlet around that area. It's really, really cool. I bought it years ago. After I did that across the whole thing, that was probably the longest part in making the sheath. I then used the thonging, got the name right this time, and basically looped it through the holes. And this is what I ended up with. I wanted something that would hold the weapon well. I then had an extra piece, and I made like a connective piece to be able to use for the harness. I did also make sure that when I was cutting the belts up to make the harness, I kept any extra pieces aside, and you'll see why in a very short moment. But this little piece here has just been made as like a little connector between the sheath and the actual harness. Now, this was the extra pieces of belt that I was talking about before that came in handy, and this is because I needed to then create something that I was going to connect the sheath to the harness, and I'm using part of the fabric as the connector of these connections, if that makes sense. But this is actually just going into the back of it, and I'm using it like a sliding attachment. And I used the thonging. I keep going to say the noodling. I used the thonging to connect it. Now just boring out some holes using my rotary tool. Would have heard me talk a lot about this previously in the last video, making the harness. And here right now, we're just making that little connective strip. I wanted it to be able to slide because I wasn't entirely sure about whether or not I was going to be redoing this part again to dress it up a little bit better, or B, if I was going to have any adjustment issues. And this actually ended up being the smartest way that I could do it, just to be able to put the harness on, and then have the sheath attached to it and just make sure that it was going to be sitting in the right spot. The thonging was like the savior for the most part when it came to the sheath, because it just gave that raw homemade feel by still allowing me to have strength in the connection. I did provide the price breakdown of that in the last video, so if you're interested in that, I give the link and all that sort of stuff in the last video. Go ahead and check it out. But here you can see I'm just attaching it directly to that strap. Again, I'm just trying to give it a raw look. That's the main thing that I'm going for. I'm going for a look. I'd probably say there's some functionality issues, which I'll get to at the very end of the video, so stay tuned for that. But the overall look and appeal is what I was going for. Now, moving on to the gun. One big thing that you want to know when it comes to working with plastics is sometimes there's like a clear coating over it. And that clear coating ends up stopping you from being able to spray over it. And I'm going to be using spray paint for this. So I just made some contact with some sandpaper over the top of it. This is, I'm pretty sure, 150 grit. And it's just basically to rough up the surface. It does also give a nice little bit of a base point for some of the weathering areas that I'm going to have later on. And areas like this, where I'm actually blocking out some of the description, like some of the decal stuff that's on the weapon. It's not decal, it's like an embossing on the back butt of the weapon. Now, before I continue, one thing that I'm going to say, and this is a word to the wise, okay? Be careful when you are making these things. It's very, very easy for them to look very realistic. And you'll see at the end of the video, this ends up looking realistic. This, although it's a toy, someone could see it and think it's a real weapon. Don't be dumb. Now, continuing on, once I sanded that area down, just to get a lot of the plastic debris off, I just sprayed some water. And then I use a cloth to wipe off some of the debris. It wasn't a lot, but you get like this fine misty sand, which is basically plastic particulates, all over it. So I'm just wiping it off just to make it easier. Now, I'm using satin black spray, and I've also got this Mission Brown gloss spray paint. I do have a third one that comes up as well, which is this one right here, this gloss metallic charcoal. It's got a little bit of a flake to it. These are the three main colors that I'm using. I have a reference image of the actual weapon that Ash Williams uses, and this is basically what I'm trying to replicate. So I'm going to be painting it similarly. Now, before I can do any of that, I need to spray the base coat. Base coat's going to help you in two major ways. Number one, when we are looking to add more layers of paint onto it, it's got a baseline, so orange is going to be the base color that's set through. So it's just a little bit easier for it, and also for weathering later on when we sand it back. Right here, I'm just actually touching it after I've used the heat gun to dry it off, just to make sure it's not tacky. But you're going to give it a couple of coats, and this is what you end up with. So this is just using the satin black. You can see it's got some rough spots and whatnot on there. I'm not overly concerned because I'm going to buff them out like you can see right here, just using some light amount of sandpaper. That's 240 grit. And then I start the actual tape job. Now, the first color that I'm going to be using is creating the wood effect. I did try to use a base coat of the Mission Brown and then try to do more other colors, and it didn't work. I just stuck to the brown. But once I've taped off the areas that are going to be sprayed brown, like you can see right here, I'm then going to begin my spraying process. Now, you can see in the earlier part I was using a heat gun. There is issues that do come along with that. And again, I'll explain at the very end of the video. But the key thing with spraying any of these coats is first coat, light. Always light. I just basically want to add a little bit of tack to it just to give it that contact. And then I'm going to continue to slowly build layer upon layer. Now, what you might not be seeing through the magical power of editing this video is that you don't see the 3-4 coats of layering on and lots of attention that goes along. So right here, I've actually finished the brown, taped it off, and then I've continued on now with the charcoal. Man, the coloring of that charcoal was so good. Like you can see here, it gives that little sparkle. I do have some rough spots that I do need to give some attention to, but it really does make it look like it's like a gunmetal. I'm using the 240 grit here, and I'm actually just buffing off some tacky bits. You can see there's some areas where it's either A, just a little bit of roughness from the multiple layers of paint, or B, it's just maybe I held the can over it and got a little bit of running. Use a 240, run over it, and then just create a little bit of a rub off on it, and then that way you can, again, wipe it off, give it another coat, so then you don't have this like gunky look that gets done to it. I am going to be weathering it and giving it an aged look, but this type of small detail does make a big difference in the end point, and it's important to me. Now, once I've painted the whole thing, I actually then started to do some additional sanding. The gloss gave it that sort of wood appeal, but it was too glossy, and I also wanted it to look weathered. And the way that I did that was with dry brushing. So I've got just a flat black acrylic paint. The way you dry brush is basically you put some paint onto the brush, and then you want to rub the excess off, and it's basically the inner part of the brush has leftover paint. And what that's going to do is it's going to create this overall worn in look, and you'll see a difference at the very end when I show you the final bit. But you can already see here, like there's some, it knocks out a lot of the gloss, and it gives this overall worn in peel. It was really, really effective at the very end when you can see on the barrel, and I do the wear in over the top. Like, it made the biggest difference, man. I can't stress that enough. One little tip is if you apply too much acrylic paint on that coat, just use a little bit of water on a rag, rub it off, and this is what you end up with. This is my finished product. I'm really, really happy with how this came out. Alright guys, so that right there was the build process. Now, how did it look? Let me show you. This right here is the end result for the sheath and the boomstick. Let me start off by talking about the sheath. Now you can see right here some of the issues that I ended up having with these metal bits. They started to peel off and separate, and it's just partly because it's just raw material, and it's a high wear area in the back. Just be aware, like, it worked out really, really well here, but this back section, because there's really no form, like you can see that it's very soft, that it basically puts a lot of torque onto that piece. I'm not going to throw any of this away. I'm going to put it aside, and I very well may come back and just restructure this up. The way that I'll probably do it is either A, using some core flute, or B, just using some craft foam. You can get really thin sheets of craft foam from places like Spotlight, any sort of craft spots, and they generally do them in decent sizes, and you can just use some glue, some tacky glue, and then layer it in. But I'll have to undo all of this and this back section to be able to get it out. I will say that overall, fantastic. It was really not a problem. It was actually quite comfortable to wear for the duration of the party. It was a little bit annoying that this was unstructured, so that's just probably something I would, like, if I had to redo this again, I'll probably fix that part. That's one part that I really wasn't too happy about. Moving on to the boomstick. Bro, dude, look at the boomstick, bro. Look at it. Now you can see here, do you see all the sanding and how it's given this texture? Like, I don't even know if this is actually doing it justice with the way that it's coming up on camera. But you can see how here it's blocked out and it has this like dullness to it. And a lot of that comes from two key special attentions. Now, guys, if you're going to do this, absolutely make sure you follow these points. First and foremost, sanding. Sanding. Sand it at the beginning, and what that does is you can see how there's these like scratch marks. There's a baseline for that's been created, and part of it comes from the initial sand job that I gave it. Now, I didn't do all of it because I had these like seams. I didn't particularly care that they were there. In fact, it's also another way to tell that it's not a real weapon. I kept a little bit of the orange, again, so you have a bit of an idea. It is not a real weapon, but I wanted it to look the part. I'm really happy with how it came out, and a big part of it is the sanding. The last part that I will say that is a special mention is the dry brushing. I knocked it out by providing some extra black worn in bits and pieces, and it almost ends up looking like scuff marks. And again, I don't think that it actually does it justice on camera. But basically what I did is I thought about the fact that Well, if Ash Williams, being the type of person that he is, he's probably going to put his gun down like this, or it's going to have contact in the floor and all these weird spots. Or he very well may be smacking someone in the back of the head, and it's going to have these like scuff marks and butt marks and stuff like that. I don't want the weapon to look pristine. I want it to look exactly like, you know, what it is. It's meant to be a prop. But I wanted it to be something that I could potentially display later. Now, that all being said, I'm really happy with how the boomstick came out. What were some problems I didn't realize I was going to encounter? When I was using the heat gun, I made the brilliant decision. Oh, it's meant to pop out. Ready? Now you can actually see there's like this weird warping and melty look. It's not on purpose. Basically what happened is the heat, when I was using the heat gun, got in through here and into these gaps and created like a little bit of a channel, and it was warping. And I was hearing these like little pops and crackle sounds, and I just thought it was the paint, but it was probably actually melting a little bit of the plastic inside. I ended up having to reshape that. I just used like a file and the heat gun and basically applied the heat and pressed it back just to keep it back into its form. But I would definitely say the heat gun helped in getting it done as quickly as I needed it to for the party, but it was an added issue that I had to be aware of. Now, when you are using a heat gun and spraying and doing all that sort of stuff with this, one little thing that I will say is less is more. I didn't put it on a high temperature. I put it on a high fan because I wanted air to come through, but I kept it on a fairly low temperature, and I just did light coats of the paint. I probably did a little bit more thicker of a coat than what I should have, I should say. But overall, really, really happy with it. And I need your help with something. Now that I've made the boomstick, I need to figure out a way to display it. Now, I have an idea, but I really want to get your guys' thoughts on exactly how you think I should display it and where in my area here I should be displaying it. So go ahead and let me know in the comments what you think I should be doing to try and display it. In fact, let me know your comments about the overall Halloween prop series in the video. I'd love to know from you guys. I know it's a little bit different than some of the other content you may have seen from me before with all the gaming videos that I've got, but it's something that I love to do. I love to make stuff, and I love to, I love to be creative. So I hope you guys enjoyed the videos. Now, lastly, in regards to the Halloween series altogether, I do apologize for the delay. We're filming right now on the 11th of the 11th, and it's taken a lot. A lot of it's got to do with, I had some distractions. It was my birthday. I also had a lot of other family stuff that was going on that was keeping me on my toes, bro. But listen, one thing that I commit to is high quality videos. And if you enjoyed these videos, and this was exactly what you needed in your day, brother, do me a favor, all right? Go ahead, like and subscribe. Help your boy out with the algorithm. I'm trying to hit 1,000 subscribers, and I could absolutely do with all the love and support from you beautiful people out there. And listen, if gaming is your thing, if craft nerdy crap is your thing, then listen, brother, this is the place for you, right? If that's your vibe, make sure you subscribe. But listen, until I see you next time, make sure you're looking after yourself, you take care, and be safe. All right, peace.